Stefan Baumann's The Grand View is funded in part by
Plein Air Magazine, for people who love painting outdoors. pleinairmagazine.com.
and by
Masterpiece Canvas, makers of fine art canvases. We supply the canvas, you supply the vision.
and by
paintingfromnature.com, a website for artists seeking inspiration, advice, and knowledge to master painting from nature. paintingfromnature.com.
In 1952, poet Gary Snyder took a summer job with the U.S. Forest Service. The work included 3 months alone in a fire lookout cabin in the jagged peaks of the Pacific Northwest. The existence, although solitary, offered a divine opportunity to read, write, and live in one of the most beautiful regions on Earth. Upon completion of his vigil, 2 of his contemporaries, Philip Whalen and Jack Kerouac, followed his lead to this summer experience in the mountains. All 3 were poets and were profoundly impacted by their experience. Jack Kerouac spent the summer of 1956 on Desolation Peak. Prior to his tenure as fire lookout, his publisher confirmed publication of his book, On the Road. Upon his descent from the mountain, he was urged to hastily write the sequel, The Dharma Bums.
My name is Stefan Baumann, and welcome to The Grand View. Today we're going to explore a place that has more glaciers than any other national park in America, and whose history of Native American culture dates back thousands of years. So come along with me as we explore one of America's secret treasures, North Cascades National Park.
Most people who come to the park come from the west side. They come from the greater Puget Sound area. So they leave I-5 and they start following the Skagit River up this wide valley. And then as they approach the park, the valley narrows and you start to see some of the peaks. And some of the first peaks you see are really rounded. And then you get to the jagged peaks, and that's all, that's all because of the glacial history of this area. And people are really impressed with the vegetation and the glaciers and the jagged peaks and the rivers. I mean, the Cascades get their name from all the cascades, all the waterfalls, and about 3,000 creeks feed this magical river. And that's because of the snow melt in the spring, and then at this time of the year, it's because of the glaciers. We're sitting here on such a beautiful day, and we haven't seen rain in weeks, and yet the Skagit River has water in it, and that's all because of the magic of glaciers. So this is just amazing. There's an amazing amount of geological relief here, from about 350 feet just as you enter the park to over 9,000 feet on the summit of Goody Mountain. And So you get an array of vegetation because you're going from the east side of the park to the west side of the park, north to south, and then you've got all those different elevation gradients and plants that like to be in specific places. So there are well over 1,600 different kinds of plants, species of plants in North Cascades. And I think the most important threat to the National Park Service as a whole is that people don't understand how important it is to protect these places. William Wordsworth has this really great quote that a friend of mine just introduced me to. And it goes something to the effect of, what we love, they will love, and we will teach them how. And that's what we want to do. We want to teach people about this place and have them fall in love with it like we have. I mean, that's why we're here. I don't think that park rangers get into this job for the money. You know, we're here because we love this place. This, and I didn't say this, and I can't remember who did, but it was said by some really wise person, is the national parks were the greatest idea America ever had. And I think that the way we protect these places really is a reflection of how we think about our country.
There's two things that go into making a great mountain range. One, it's uplift, which makes the land high above sea level, because erosion wants to tear everything back down to sea level. And the other is the recency of glaciation. And the North Cascades has that. They have been recently glaciated, and they still have a lot of glaciers. The Cascades are famous from the standpoint of hikers and climbers, for having this lower region of very dense forest, the big Douglas fir, cedar forest. And you climb out of that into a kind of a belt of meadowland from 4,500 to 6,000 feet maybe, where there are all the meadows and all the lush, beautiful places that everybody loves so. And then you get into the glaciers and the bare rock of the upper part. The big story, actually, from scenery standpoint, is the glaciation, which carved them so well into such jagged peaks. The big actor was the Canadian ice sheet, which came into Puget Sound, and it reached its maximum somewhere around 10,000 years ago. It dammed a lot of the rivers that came out of the Cascades on the east side. It actually dammed rivers in the Olympics as well, and it went out the Straits of Juan de Fuca, partly. And the ice came down and covered practically all of North Cascade National Park. So the only thing that would have stuck up would have been the very high peaks. One of the fingers of the Canadian ice sheet went down Lake Chelan, a mighty glacier. Essentially, by then, it was acting like an alpine glacier and carved the valley. Lake Chelan is very deep. It's deeper than sea level. It's about, at the bottom part of the lake, it's like 1,000 feet below sea level in the deepest part. That's because the ice could do that. You usually can't carve things deeper than sea level by streams, but you can do it with ice. But there's a great variety of rocks, ranging from rocks which are probably on the order of at least 300 million years old, up to very recent things like Mount Baker.
The Skagit River, there wasn't too many families, they were all homesteads then. There wasn't. There was a lot of people, but they were scattered. In those days, when I was young, it was really tough, you know. I would say tough in a way. You know, it was very poor, you know. We all lived along the river, mostly on they had homesteads, you know. There was no reservation then. When I was a little boy, I was practically on top of every one of these mountains around us here. Now you see, I was before roads. We went up there for hunting, berries, deer, bear. I went with my family. We went all as a group together. I'm 76 now, and that was quite a while ago when I was a little boy.
The significance behind this totem is it was an eagle. And many of us have a connection with the eagle. And sometimes when you watch an eagle, he'll circle around, circle around, circle around. And the elders would say, that is your prayer. He is bringing your prayer to the mystery. So next time you see an eagle go like that, you'll say, there's something that he's doing. Why does he do that? Go higher and higher. He's carrying those prayers from Mother Earth. A story pole is something that would be of something that would be history. It would be history to the village itself. Like if my daughter or my son were to get married, and the carver of that village, I would commission him with gifts and everything, and he would create that story of that particular time. This is what happened. These clans came together. All these clans came together, and the one on the bottom. Sometimes, you know, that's that old saying, "You're the lowest man on a totem pole." But correction. The lowest man on a totem pole is one who hosts. He has hosted that gathering. He is one who has brought you into the circle of his family.
Well, we've explored all over North Cascades National Park, and we finally found a beautiful place. This area here is Cascade Pass, and I thought that this would be an exquisite place for a painting. This is a very large composition. These mountains are just immense. So we need to shrink things down very, very early. We want to make sure that we also capture this peak. This is absolutely a beautiful place to paint. We're just completely surrounded by glaciers and wonderful, wonderful peaks. When you're sketching, a good tool to use is a paper towel. You can wet a little bit of this paper towel with turpentine, and you can wipe off areas of the sketch and also sketch a little bit with the towel itself, and this will help create some wonderful halftones. Or you could just change the direction of your mountain or your flow. Now there's these wonderful areas of bushes on the edge of the mountains, and I want to place a pattern of those in. They're almost like little puzzle pieces. And at this point I want to lay the basin for some of my logs. These will help break up all of this green area. I'm going to dig in more shadow into my bushes. Shadow is very, very important in the sketching phase, and it will help create a little bit of depth. There's a few pines that are to the right of the composition that I'm going to bring into my painting to offer some vertical shapes to help kind of counterbalance all the diagonal shapes. And on the left, I'm going to do the same thing. There's a couple of magnificent trees to the left of me. I'm going to bring them up, and this is going to help with those lines leading out of the canvas. We're going to bring them up right up into the sky. There's also a wonderful waterfall that comes off one of these glaciers. And I'm going to place that in dark as a sketch. This is a strong dark background for my waterfall. So I want to be sure that I do that in dark first. And now with our sketch almost done, I'm going to go ahead and stop, and I'm going to add the other colors that we're going to use today. Alizarin crimson and cad yellow. And the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take my yellow, red, and blue and mix up a nice base gray color. This is your base color for your mountains. I'm going to switch from a filbert brush to a flat bristle brush. And this is a large brush, and I'm going to take white and blue. And I'm going to add a little bit of turpentine and a little bit of that gray color that we just mixed up. Since there's not a lot of texture with clouds in my sky, I've got to make the blue itself interesting. And I'm going to do that with brush strokes. Now remember, towards the top of my sky and towards the top of my painting, these areas are going to be bluer. And as we come down towards the top of the mountain, we're going to introduce a little bit more gray and a little more yellow. Now with our sky done, we're ready to start doing the base of this magnificent mountain. And I'm also using a fair amount of paint. Not too much, because I actually want to put detail on top of here. There's a little moisture in the air, and I like that because it helps create a little distance, especially since the main focal area is going to be down towards the center of my canvas. Now this area feels to me as if there's more sunlight in it, so I'm going to add more yellow and white and get a brighter light. Now I'm going to take the same brush and I'm going to start concentrating on the glaciers in the background. And I'm going to put in the yellow and white. Pay very close attention to the shape that these glaciers make. As the day progresses, these glaciers are going to be fully exposed. So by placing the shadow in now, we actually get the feeling that the sun's coming up over the horizon. This ridge out here that's causing the shadow across my glacier has rocks and trees growing on it. And what I'm doing is very softly dragging the shadows of the trees and rocks across my glacier. The next ridge down, there's a beautiful area of green trees growing. But there's this wonderful mossy green. And these areas are just lush. I'm going to mix up more yellow and red. And I want to put also some of the highlight of the rock getting this beautiful morning light on it. All of this shale is being lit up also. I may change this slightly as the painting changes. Remember, I'm trying to bring the main focal area towards the middle of my painting. And the more the light comes out, the more lush this area becomes. It's spectacular to be out here and watch the world wake up. Now with a lot of the detail done, what I want to do is start putting in this magnificent waterfall that's coming down off the glacier. The falls break up in these wonderful formations. They get narrow and then they get wide again. This is what gives your painting the sense of realism. Now with a little more white, I'm going to place a strong highlight right at the very top of my waterfall. Now with that done, I'm ready to start painting in all my shale area. I'm going to take just a broad brush and very quickly place in what I see. These are more in shadow at this point, and then we're going to bring the highlights in on top. Very quick, bold strokes. Now I'm going to take my light mixture and start bringing the highlight on the shale. There's definitely a feeling that this area is going one direction. I'm adding more yellow and blue and white. And I want to create a warm green color. Now with our shell done, we're ready to start working on our foreground trees. These are a layer behind the trees in my foreground. I really want to make this area feel like it's coming forward. And you do that by bringing pure color. Now we're going to start putting in the highlights in this area. Short, bold areas of bright light. Not paying attention to every little tiny leaf, but paying attention to the light and the story it's telling as it's streaming across these wonderful bushes in the foreground. I'm going to intermix a little bit of my burnt sienna color into this to help give the feeling of dirt and ground. Now with the base of my bushes done, I'm ready to switch to a fan brush. Now a lot of artists don't like using a fan brush because it tends to leave the same kind of footprint all over your painting. But the secret to using a fan brush is just to use the corner of the brush. This is my base color and the highlight color. And I'm just putting in a little bit of detail as I go along. Now this area here, I want to bring a lot of light on the background hill, and I want to create the illusion of light by bringing shadow. Now I'm going to switch to a smaller brush, and I'm going to place a little bit smaller brush strokes back here. This area too also has those logs laying down. So let's go ahead and just place a few of those in. Using cobalt blue and burnt sienna, just laying in the shadow. And now with my bushes more or less complete, we're ready to start laying in the trunks of our foreground trees. Now just very carefully go up this side of the tree. This is going to be the highlight side. And we're going to bring a shadow side also. Burnt sienna cobalt blue, laying in the shadow. The center area of my tree is a little more light on it. I definitely want to try to get that bright light right on the edge. And I'm going to bring the shadow in and twist it a little bit just to give it a little bit more sense of the tree that we're looking at. I'm going to do these trees on the left with a darker color, and I want to be careful the placement of this tree, and I want to make sure that the trunk is far enough away from my waterfalls so they don't interfere. Go very slowly and twist the brush as you go up. Now with the trunks of my trees done, we're ready to start putting in the foliage. Working our way up. Be sure you leave a little space showing for the trunk. Don't be so quick to put these branches in that you cover up everything. This is why this color had to be absolutely dark. See how it comes across my light green? Now with the foliage on my trees done, we're going to introduce the flowers in the foreground. And I'm putting them into my painting because not only are they part of the painting, but they'll help break up all of these green tones I'm using. I'm just going to add white, a little bit of blue. Now using the corner of the brush, just start placing these flowers, and they find their way around these logs. I'm going to add more yellow and white and highlight these flowers, and these highlighted ones will only find themselves in the center of my composition. Now with our flowers done, we're ready to sign the painting and conclude this wonderful day at North Cascades National Park. Expanded instructional DVDs that feature an hour-long demonstration of today's painting and other paintings in the series are available at the Grandview by calling 1-800-511-1337. Join us on our website, thegrandview.org, and get more information about our show. There you can download our free book, Everything You Need to Know About Outdoor Painting, along with a free diagram of today's subject. Stefan Baumann's The Grand View is funded in part by
paintingfromnature.com, a website for artists seeking inspiration, advice, and knowledge to master painting from nature. paintingfromnature.com.
and by
Masterpiece Canvas, makers of fine art canvases. We supply the canvas, you supply the vision.
and by
Plein magazine for people who love painting outdoors. pleinairmagazine.com